Swiss Family Robinson, Chapter 24, The Salt Cavern. It is impossible to describe our joy when, after 3 long months of confinement and privation, we again gazed on the clear sky and the bright sunshine. The sorrows of the winter were quite forgotten. No prisoners set at liberty could have felt more joy than we did as we stepped forth from our winter abode, refreshed our eyes with the pleasant verdure around us, and drank in the pure, balmy air of spring. We felt ourselves inspired with new hope, and the work which lay before us seemed in our gladness but child's play. Our tree plantation was in excellent condition. The land we had cultivated was flourishing. The seeds we had sown were springing up, and the trees were putting forth their young leaves of delicate green. The ground was everywhere covered with flowers of varied hues, with sweet fragrance filling the air, while birds of the most brilliant plumage made the woods resound with sound, as if in symphony with us. Our first work was at our lodging in the tree. It was sadly dilapidated, for the rain had greatly damaged the sailcloth roof, and twigs and dried leaves had drifted into our sleeping apartment. The stalls of the animals under the arched roofs were also damaged, as well as the staircase in the trunk. While Fritz and I were attending to these repairs, Ernest and Jack turned the animals out to graze upon the soft green grass. My wife also reminded me of the flax, which required beating, combing, and carding before it could be spun and woven. "You will probably find Tent House no less injured by the rain than this," she added, "and while you and the older boys are absent, I can stay here with little Frank and spin the flax, for you are sadly in need of clothes." The manufacturing of a spinning wheel and reel was by no means an easy task, but by dint of study and perseverance, I contrived to turn to account one of the lightest of the wheels I had brought from the wreck, and though rude and clumsy, the machines answered the purpose admirably, and my wife was delighted with them. The boys prepared the steeped flax, and we thus had, as she said, all that would be required for a new supply of clothing. The damage done in Falcon's Nest was but trifling compared to the deplorable destruction at Tent House. The tent was overthrown, the sailcloth covering torn, and so completely soaked were the stores of provisions that the greater part of them would have been destroyed had we not quickly placed them in the sun to dry. Fortunately, the pinnace had sustained no injury, although the tugboat had been knocked about and was now of little value, and 2 of the 3 powder casks were so thoroughly wetted as to be rendered wholly useless. This latter circumstance led me to study how I might contrive winter quarters where such disasters could not occur, and my mind turned to a bold project of Fritz to hollow out a cave in the rocks. This was no easy thing with the tools and strength at our disposal, and it seemed impossible, except as the work of several summers. I, however, determined to hew out a place of shelter for our powder stores, and set out one morning with Fritz and Jack to make the beginning of our work. After carefully examining the whole neighboring rocks, I selected a part of the cliff which appeared smooth and steep, and from the top of which would be seen at most extended view of the safety bay and the 2 banks of the river. Here I marked with charcoal the outline of an opening, and we took upon ourselves the office of stone delvers. The work was most exhausting, and our first day's progress was so slight that I despaired of being able to complete even a common cellar before the time of another rainy season. But on the following day we set to work with a rendered vigor. The rock under the outer surface became softer, and in just a few days more we had penetrated into the distance of about 7 feet. And when Jack, who was trying to bore a hole with a large crowbar, cried out, "I am through, Papa, I am through." "Through what, my boy? Not through your hand, I hope, and you are certainly not through the mountain." "Yes, I am, Papa. Hurrah, hurrah!" "Quite right, Papa," said Fritz. "He is indeed through. The iron spike has gone through into an open space, for I can turn it round and round as I like." Seizing the bar, I worked it about with such force that an opening was soon made large enough for one of the boys to slip through. But as I approached it, a puff of foul air rushed out, and for a moment I was almost overpowered. "Come away," I cried. "To breathe the air from this opening would be certain death." I explained to the boys that under certain conditions, foul air, chiefly gas, commonly called carbonic acid gas, accumulates in close caves. Such as this appeared to be, rendering the air unfit for respiration, and that one of the surest tests of the stability of air to support life is fire, for a flame will go out in the air that's not fit to breathe. I at once sent them to collect some dry hay, which I lighted and threw into the opening. It was immediately extinguished, even after I several times repeated the experiment, and it was obvious that we must resort to other measures. We had brought from the wreck a case of fireworks, such as hand grenades, rockets, and blue lights, intended for signals. I dispatched Fritz for some of these to throw the lighted grenades into the cave. Retiring into a little distance, we watched the result. A great explosion with singular reverberations followed, and a quantity of gas rushing out was replaced by pure air. We sent in a few other rockets, which flew around like fury dragons and ended in a shower of sparks. And after waiting a little while, I again made a trial of the lighted gas, which, as it blazed freely, showed that all danger from impure air was now removed. We were yet in ignorance of the depth and dimensions of this unexpected cavern, so I sent our active little Jack, to Falcon's Nest to tell his mother of our joyful discovery, and to bring her and his brothers also back with him, together with the supply of our wax candles, that we might explore together this wonderful vault. In about an hour they arrived, during which time Fritz and I enlarged the opening, and we entered the grotto, each bearing a lighted wax candle, taking a tinderbox in case the candle should go out. I led the way, feeling the ground with my feet. We had not advanced very far before the appearance of the grotto star led us with its wonderful beauty. The lights that we carried were reflected on the walls in golden light. The columns which rose from the floor to the vaulted roof sparkled and glittered with all the colors of the rainbow. Crystals hung from the roof in fantastic forms, and the whole aspect of the place was that of some fairy palace of romance, whilst the floor was covered with soft, firm sand that showed no trace of dampness. I recalled descriptions I had read of salt mines in Poland, and breaking off a bit of the crystal and putting it in my mouth, I found that we were in a cavern of crystallized rock salt. Not the least of its advantages would be that both ourselves and our cattle would now be provided with a never-ending supply of this condiment, so necessary for health, instead of the precarious and unsatisfactory one we had hitherto depended upon, vis-a-vis that left by the evaporation of the seawater in crevices on the rocks. Our admiration of the cavern, as we penetrated further, knew no bounds. Plan after plan was quickly proposed for turning it to the best advantage, and our inventive powers were newly excited by this fresh opportunity for their exercise. It was at last decided that Falcon's Nest should continue to be our summer residence and sleeping quarters, but that the entire day was to be spent at Tent House while we prepared a winter home at what now we called Rock Castle.